grab their drinks, and get ready to be part of this listening session tonight. So you have that last minute bag of popcorn that you need to eat very quietly on mute. Please do that now. It looks like we're gaining some critical mass. Should we go ahead and get started? Chair Harrington, would you like to kick us off?
Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening in this Washington County listening session. This is the third listening session that we're having in this 2-week time period to better engage with members of our community. Tonight, along with myself, the chair of the Washington County Board of Commissioners, you also have at least 2 other county commissioners of the total board of 5. I'm joined by my colleagues, Commissioner Pam Treese, as well as Commissioner Dick Scouten. Could I have each one of them just say hello and show you their faces as well?
Hello. Hello, everyone. I'm looking forward to our discussions tonight. Thank you.
And hello, this is Pam Treese. I am also looking forward to our discussion. For the past 2 sessions, I've learned a great deal, and I look forward to learning more this evening. So thank you for participating.
Yes. Thank you, Commissioner Treese and Commissioner Scouten. Just to double check, if someone can check the participants list for me to see if Commissioner Roy Rogers or Commissioner Jerry Willey were able to join as I was going through the introduction.
I think for now it's just the 3 of you.
Okay, thank you. So we very much look forward to the activities that we'll be going through this evening. There will be a little bit of polling and then a series of questions and appropriate use of breakout rooms as well. Please know that your input is very important to us and highly respected. We will be getting a report about these listening sessions before the end of September, and we will be coming back to this topic as a board before the end of September. So I'd like to turn it back over to Nancy. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Chair Harrington. So welcome, everybody. And thank you for spending your Monday night being civically engaged with the Washington County Commission. Maribel?
I'd like to make an announcement for those who need Spanish interpretation. May I?
Of course.
Buenas tardes a todos. Si gustan interpretación en español, favor de en su pantalla va a haber un icono que dice Interpretation. Eso quiere decir interpretación. Y tenemos a Víctor esta tarde con nosotros que va a estar haciendo la interpretación simultáneamente. De nuevo, si gustan interpretación en español, solo hay que oprimir el icono abajo de su pantalla que dice Interpretation o en español Interpreter y se pueden conectar con Víctor. Cuando ustedes opriman ese icono, van a seleccionar donde dice español y ahí Víctor les va a poder apoyar con la interpretación. Gracias. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you, Maribel, for that. And there's also ASL interpretation available as well. And hopefully folks have access to that feature. And so tonight we're talking about body-worn cameras and some other issues that affect our community. And this is really a listening session. This is a chance for all of you to speak your truth, share your opinion. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to really let you speak, but we do have some really basic reminders of how we should spend our time together. One is to stay engaged. I know that everyone suffers from Zoom fatigue these days, but we're hoping that if you're here, that you're really engaging with the process. There's going to be a couple polling questions, and then there's going to be a chance for you to be in a smaller group and get to share your opinions and speak your truth responsibly. So I think it's really important when you share space together to not share what you read on the internet, but actually tell your story and give your opinion about what you believe. And that today is about the commissioners listening to you, but also listening to each other, and that we're really spending time listening to understand each other, and that it might be a little bit uncomfortable at times, and that it's okay to experience that discomfort, and we're just going to hold space for that, and that we're really trying to do things a little differently here. I've actually not experienced that many open Zoom calls, so like this, and so I think the County Commission is doing a great thing where they really want to hear from you. And, the issues we're talking about tonight include talking about racism and talking about police violence. None of these issues came up overnight. They've been happening for hundreds of years. So I don't think we're going to solve it, sadly, sorry. We're not going to solve racism tonight. So I'd say expect and accept that we're not non-closure, right? We're not going to really fix things tonight. And it's really about listening so we can move forward. And then the idea of trying to maintain some sort of confidentiality, even though this is a recorded meeting, especially in the main session, this is a public session of the Washington County Commissioners. But, tomorrow, when you're thinking about this and you're telling people about it, I like to say, share the lesson, not the story. So think about what you gain from it rather than having to say, this person said this, right? Or outing somebody because they were in this meeting. And then I'm going to add a couple that weren't on the PowerPoint, which is really step forward, step back. If you're typically outspoken, take a step back, pause for others. If you're typically reserved, step forward. It's okay to assert your opinion. And also, tonight is a pretty special night because it's LGBTQ night. And it's not often that the community gets to come together like this. It's like basically tiny Washington County pride, but with focus. People don't know me. I'm Nancy Hawk. I'm the executive director of Basic Rights Oregon, which is our statewide LGBTQ policy organization. We've been fighting for all of you since 1996, but thank you. But because tonight is an affinity group session, It's for LGBTQ folks. Everyone is welcome to be here, but if you don't identify as a member of the LGBTQ community, please let folks who do speak first, and maybe step back a little bit and let folks really speak who come from the community, because there is a focus tonight on the LGBTQ community. And I'd say as a community, we have our own unique experiences with police and policing that include, you know, those of us who are people of color, those of us who aren't, but especially people in the trans community have their own specific experiences with police and policing. And so, and also, I'll add another one. Keep your comments as brief as you can. I really want to hear stories about your cat, but maybe not tonight. So, you know, just try to keep it brief. And yeah, we're really trying to hear from you, and that this is a listening session, and it's designed to get your feedback on what issues are most important to you and what you'd like to see from the leadership of Washington County. And so I will also say that this is not a Q&A where you'll get immediate answers to your questions, but we are tracking everything here, and county staff will follow up with you after each session to address any questions that are sort of lingering or that they see out there. So, you know, you can ask your questions, but one thing is I might ask back like your opinion on the question. And so one of the main reasons for the listening sessions is to get feedback from all of you about the question of body-worn cameras. And the sheriff has publicly supported these listening sessions. And there's a few key pieces on body-worn cameras that our chat room monitor will share in the main room. One is a link to the current policy on body-worn cameras. There will also be a link to body-worn cameras FAQs and a link to a fact sheet on body-worn cameras. And so one thing to keep in mind too about tonight is that the Board of County Commissioners actually doesn't have policy control over the sheriff, only budgetary control. So if someone asks, you know, will the county require the sheriff to keep a log of every instance where a body-worn camera was used and there was an altercation, would have to respond back? Do you think the Board of Commissioners should have that sort of policy leverage over the sheriff? And so it's hopefully not too frustrating of a process, but we really want everyone to know that it's a listening session, and, you know, obviously the commission has some leverage, but can't make policy for the sheriff. And tonight's pretty interesting in that everything in the main room will be the public meeting, because we'll have the county commissioners, including Chair Harrington, in the main room. And so whether you're speaking or if you're chatting in the chat room, that will be included as part of the public record. So if you're like, oh, I see my friend Joe, he's looking pretty cute. Hey, Joe, looking cute. That's going to be public record. So maybe think about texting Joe instead. And then there will be a couple of breakout rooms that are not recorded, and no commissioners will be present, but it's still a public forum. So whether it's spoken or in the chat room, it's essentially public. It just won't be part of the county's official public records. So, and like all Zoom meetings, come on people, you know this drill. Keep yourself on mute unless you're speaking, or unless you're me, because I get to talk a lot. Facilitator privilege. So yes, mute yourself when you're not speaking. And also you should know that the main room will include ASL and Spanish interpretation, but only the main room. And then there will be 2 breakout rooms, and each of those are important. So one of the roles of the county is that the county government serves as a safety net for our communities. And here in Washington County, we have programs that range from health and human services programs with everything from public health, WIC, which is Women, Infants, and Children programs, and programs for veterans. We house a collaborative library service through the county in partnership with the cities. There's a variety of public safety programs, including the Sheriff's Office, community corrections, and juvenile justice. So, and again, the county does not have direct oversight of the sheriff. And also, full disclosure, I don't live in Washington County. I don't know a ton about body-worn cameras, but my job tonight is for you to get listened to. And so hopefully that's going to happen. And again, Maribel, would you mind doing another reminder about interpretation?
Buenas tardes a todos. Si gusta la interpretación en español, favor de oprimir el icono abajo de su pantalla que dice Interpretation, seleccionando ahí la palabra Spanish. De ahí Víctor, que es nuestro intérprete, les va a poder apoyar. Sepan que nada más la sala principal, ¿cuál es esta?, va a tener la interpretación en español. Si los mandan a uno de los salones privados y usted necesita interpretación, le toca salir de ese salón y regresar al salón principal, oprimiendo un icono que dice Leave Breakout Room. Gracias.
Thank you so much. And so now, running just a few minutes behind, we're going to get into some polling questions, and you'll be able to respond. I actually don't know how it's all going to work, but I know I have a lot of faith in county staff who are making all this technology work. So I'm going to ask a few questions, and you're going to be able to participate. And so, just give me a second. So one of the primary reasons for this listening session, as I've said, is to discuss law enforcement's use of body-worn cameras. And so while we're in this room together, we're going to ask a couple of anonymous polling questions. So everything, I said all this stuff about everything's a public meeting, but your answer to these polling questions will be anonymous. And so if you're in this meeting room, you can use your computer or smartphone, and you can see what's happening in the screen. You'll see the poll pop up, both in English and Spanish, in just a moment. And I'm sorry, if you're only using the audio feature tonight, you will not be able to participate in the poll. And so I believe, Kevin, you're gonna put up the first polling question. Oh, you already have, which is, how do you feel about equipping all law enforcement with body-worn cameras? And it looks like we're gonna let 53% of you have voted already. Good job, you're doing great. And okay, it looks like there's some good voting happening. Pretty soon we're gonna reach like federal level voter participation and national elections. We want to get up to Oregon level. Let's get up to at least 80%. I think we can do it. I have faith in this group. Doing great. Oh, almost up to 70%. We still have some people joining. That's great. So apparently if you're using Zoom in a web browser rather than in the app, it might not show up for you. So sorry about that, but hopefully most people can see it. And we still have a few attendees joining. So yeah, should we? Okay. So we're gonna take a moment. So yes, so you all answered the question, and it seems like most folks are in agreement that law enforcement should have body cameras, body-worn cameras. That's interesting, but there's also some strong disagreement that I see. So we'll see. And if you haven't had a chance to vote, you should be able to see the polling now. And then the next question is going to offer you some statements about the use of body-worn cameras. And you're going to want to read these statements and tell us which ones you agree with by clicking the appropriate button alongside them. So I'm going to ask Kevin to, give us the second poll. It just popped up for me. Hopefully it does for everyone else. So if folks want to take a moment. You're doing great. Really getting in there. This is fascinating. Also makes me know that I don't know enough about how to use Zoom. I thought I did. It's been like 6 months, but there's so many things I didn't know how to do. So thank you for that. And voting is still open. Great. So now you can see the poll results. And yeah, it looks like there's some really strong agreement on a few of these that I see, including it requires trust in the police to turn on the camera when they're engaging with the community. That had the most support, and that it promotes accountability and transparency. So that is really good to know. So thank you for that. And okay, so now we want people to be able to discuss what happened in the poll. And so to make this go as smoothly as possible, all the participants, you'll all be assigned a breakout room. And this will happen automatically, so you don't need to do anything. The exception to that are the county commissioners, who are going to remain in the main room to discuss the topic of body-worn cameras. And if there's any time remaining, other topics of interest to the group. So if you want to be with the main room with the county commissioners, you can simply wait until you've been sent into a breakout room and then click the leave button at the bottom of your screen, and it will take you back to the main room. Another option, however, is to remain in the breakout room and open a separate web page open to the county's YouTube channel, which will be broadcasting the activities at the main room. And the link for the channel will be posted in each breakout room chat area. So it's basically Washington County, Oregon's YouTube channel, which I didn't know existed, but it does, and I'm sure it's great. Yeah, so are there any questions before folks get sent into breakout rooms? Looks like there's still some people waiting to enter this meeting. So we're still gaining a few folks, and we'll be in our rooms momentarily.
And Nancy, thanks for your patience. I'm still getting the room set up, and it will just be one moment.
No problem. So yeah, if folks just want to take a moment, think about the poll results, and you'll be in breakout rooms. And we have some amazing breakout room facilitators, can I just say? They're incredible leaders in the community. We have Dr. Tyler Tamir from Cascade AIDS Project. We have Cameron Witten, the ED of Brown Hope. So it's kind of an all-star cast you got tonight. And I think that in the breakout rooms, you'll have the opportunity, you can talk about body-worn cameras, but you can also talk about other issues you care about. In a poll that Washington County did earlier this summer, it seemed like beyond this topic, people really cared about racial justice, people really care about housing and houselessness. And so it feels like there's a lot of interesting things to discuss. And this is your chance to be heard. So that's true.
I was sent to the wrong breakout room. So I need to be actually sent to breakout room 1 if possible.
Versus the main room.
Sorry, Tyler. I don't know how that happened.
It's fine. I was in breakout 2 for a minute. It's fine.
Yeah. I was in breakout 1. It was really confusing. Kieran's there, ready, waiting to take notes for you, though.
Awesome.
Tyler, I moved you in 1, and I show you in 1, and it says not joined. I'm not quite sure how to get you back to 1, but let me go ahead and just do some troubleshooting.
It looks like Mira and Araceli are going to have a very intimate experience with 3 county commissioners. I hope you don't mind. Oh, Mira, you're a note taker.
I'm a note taker, so.
Well, it looks like Araceli Mendez is going to have a very intimate experience. Oh, there's Kyle Stack.
Okay. So it looks like we have a lot of staff, county commissioners, and just a few participants, but that's okay. For now, some people might come out of their breakout rooms and come join us in the main room. So, yeah,
That's
it looks
what
like
I
that's
just
happening. Okay, well, welcome. Thank you. And if you can, I encourage folks to, if you want to, turn your video on if you'd like. I don't know. I just like seeing people's faces. I do get tired of looking at my own face, but that's just what's happening. So yeah, let's talk about the poll that we just saw, and let's talk about what folks saw and how folks are coming into this meeting thinking about body-worn cameras. Anybody want to start? You can, I think you should be able to raise your hand in Zoom, or you could, if you have your camera on, you could raise your actual hand. And, or if you'd like, you can put in the chat that you'd like to speak. Corrine, I see a hand. Oh, you did both.
So it's confusing if you haven't used Zoom, or even if you have used Zoom, to remember how you can raise your hand. You have to actually pull up the participants list, and then down at the bottom, it's invite, mute me, and lower hand. So there's a variety of instructions. So you have to take this extra step to pull up this window. So just for anybody else who might want to raise their hand. And then I did mention, I made comments in the chat about kind of that first poll, and how I was like, I don't feel like I can really make a recommendation one way or the other, because I don't feel like I have enough evidence that body cameras are effective, and what they might be effective at. And so I think it would be really helpful if commissioners can fill us in on what they've heard about the effectiveness of cameras, that might be useful to include that in communications, whether that's here or elsewhere. I think that would help the public understand what are the factors that are being weighed and balanced here. But I've been seeing news reports recently saying they don't do much to reduce the amount of police actions that could be considered assault or otherwise unlawful. And there's also reports that police are sometimes turning their cameras on and sometimes not turning their cameras on, and therefore that the ability to not use the camera further reduces their effectiveness. And these things are expensive, and if we're going to invest in them, I would want to really understand that they are going to help our community and address our community's concerns about how people are treated by law enforcement. So I'll just toss that out. I hope that gets us started.
Thank
I
you.
have more to say if nobody else does, but.
Well, thank you for getting us started. And I think you bring up a lot of important points. So I'm not sure if anyone's prepared to sort of talk about, because I've said multiple times, we're not going to do Q&A, but I do think that one of the things that I was hearing is you just really want to know how effective they are. And it sounds like, especially with concerns around, do they actually decrease violence against Black community and communities of color?
So that would be correct. I also, and I know my comments spoke to, assault and unlawful actions, but even the way people are spoken to by law enforcement, it's not just their physical actions sometimes that are really unnerving, disparaging, disrespectful. Sometimes the words that are chosen by officers actually do nothing to de-escalate a situation, and instead escalate the situation by, insulting people, using derogatory terms, sometimes even just facial reactions. So I've had interactions with sheriffs wearing a pride shirt, and the way they look at me is very, it just breaks my heart. I feel like I have personally disgusted them, that they see me as someone who is repulsive. And that just like I said, it's very hurtful. And that's nothing that they've done to me physically, but it still is very impactful. And it would be the kind of thing that I think we would hope cameras would prevent people from doing. But I'm not sure it would.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I'm sorry that happened to you, but words hurt. I think hopefully everyone knows that, and that also demeanor. And so I'm going to invite folks, and I see in the chat, April, you wrote that if the poll had an option that included defunding the police while earmarking a portion of the reduced budget for body cams and community oversight, we would have seen different results. And I just wanted to invite you, if you'd like to like talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. So I think that there are a lot of people in our community that are interested in reducing police funding and shifting it into social services. And so the poll presents an interesting question of, should we give more money to police for the purpose of body cams, hoping that that will have some kind of impact on how officers behave? But I think that that's throwing good money after bad if it's in addition to their budget, instead of part of a reduction of their budget with a plan for additional community oversight. And so I was disappointed, especially after the letter that was sent by CARE to the County Commission and signed on to by several community organizations. I was disappointed to see the way that those things were presented in the poll. I understand the poll has limited options, but it seems like that was an essential point to distinguish within the community the difference between the desire for body cams and also the desire to reduce police funding. I also work as a public defender, and one of the considerations for me when body cams are added to law enforcement and when we see an increase in the district attorney's budget is that public defenders don't get an increase in their budget based on anything the county does. And funding for public defenders has been stagnant lately by the state. So if you're adding all these body cams and also giving the DAs, they got the public safety levy, so that increases some of their staffing. But meanwhile, you're having people's lawyers who are charged with defending their rights, having additional limitations on time. One thing I see in our county is that officers turn on and off their body cams at different times. So if you have 5 officers responding to a traffic stop with a misdemeanor resulting from that, I have to watch 5 different body cams because you'll hear them tell each other like, oh, my cam is on or my cam is off. And I need to look for those little moments because those are when the critical things come up. So it's increasing the amount of time that needs to be spent on cases by public defenders by a significant amount. And it's reducing people's time with their public defenders in turn. But if you were to defund the police as part of it, then we would see cutting of some of those petty cases and kind of unnecessary charges related to homelessness and addiction issues. And if we served those in different ways, then I think it would be better. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak to the defund issue?
I'll just say that I appreciate what April has shared, and I do agree that I feel like law enforcement is being asked to provide social services, and they're not equipped, they're not trained, that's not their purpose. If we could provide more social services to people directly, it would probably be more cost effective than paying law enforcement salaries and overtime, and people it might also reduce the number of questionable interactions.
Thank you. And also just April, given your position, I just really appreciate your comments because you have a really unique role in the community and it's really important. And Thank you. And also, it seems like Kyle, you're ready to speak up.
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. Definitely appreciate the forum to be able to have our voices heard. I guess I'm not extremely informed on this topic, and I have not read studies that argue for or against body cameras. I think it's an interesting point about separating the notion of providing body cameras versus defunding parts of departments and finding solutions that way. But just as a resident here in Beaverton, I would say that common sense dictates that one thing that we certainly need more in our police enforcement or in our law enforcement is accountability. And if body cameras are able to be a mechanism to provide more accountability of law enforcement, and if there's perhaps built-in accountabilities also for not being able to turn off cameras and what that means if they are turned off and how that's monitored, then it does seem like, at least from that standpoint, that body cameras help solve a broader solution that that I think we're all hearing from a lot of people in this country, that there needs to be more accountability in the system. And so I worry a little bit about dismissing the usefulness or the worthiness of spending money on body cameras at risk of funding law enforcement, when that also does put aside the fact that we want more accountability. A lot of people want more accountability. I certainly do in law enforcement in general. So those are the points I would make now, but I think we all obviously could use a little more education on these topics.
Thank you for that. And I think that the idea is that these listening sessions are a start to that education, and that there's going to be a report written, and there's going to be sort of more conversation as the county moves forward. And so I also just, so you brought up, Kyle, the question of police accountability, and I would just throw open that question to everybody about what police accountability looks like to you.
Hi, I would like to talk about police accountability for a second.
Sure, great. Go ahead, Pedro.
Yeah, I think most of us are familiar with like how police can come from slave patrols and to protect land settlements. And when we talk about like accountability, like we started this meeting talking about how Washington County can't specifically dictate police policy, but we are their lifeline and their money. And like our budgets are like our moral documents. And just somebody once told me, like, if you want to radicalize somebody, like have them look at the city budget. And that is so real here. Like all of my queer friends like know about Cascade AIDS Project, know about Basic Rights Oregon, know about Prism Health, because like they've been reliant or they've been pushed away from their families. And that's where they like find their community and find services that help them. So when like to tie this back into like the moral budget and accountability, like if we understand that like systemically there's an issue with policing and the prison system, then like our biggest and quickest recourse of like going after police accountability is at least removing some of their funding and reallocating those resources to places like Prism Health and Cascade AIDS Project, housing. And I understand like my biggest safety whenever I come across a police officer is pulling out my camera, but that still doesn't help the fact that like I could get pulled over and not get tried by anything and still get held by police for X amount of hours before they release me. So I just want to beat the drum that like we have to look at their money. We have to look at how much the city like supports the police and supports the prisons here with the budget, and accountability can come after we remove some of their toys and their funding. And then I do have a question about like militarization in the police, like the 1033 program is a federal program that like passes along surplus military equipment to police forces around the country. And I'm just curious about whether or not Washington County has ever benefited from any excess surplus military equipment or military surveillance technology.
Thank you for that. So I think that the idea of tonight is that we're not actually the commissioners aren't answering questions unless I hear differently. But I will hear a no vote from you on militarizing Washington County Police. So, and we'll make sure that gets in the notes. And so, yeah, and then, so Joey, I welcome you to speak. I saw some interest in the chat.
Yeah, hi. So my name is Joey. I am the Beaverton Hello outreach worker with Home Fleet Youth Services. For those of you who aren't familiar with the work that we do, we are one of two nonprofits in Washington County that aims specifically to serve houseless and at-risk youth. And so obviously, a lot of the youth that we work with have a lot of interactions with the police. And I have seen firsthand in these interactions the biases that exist in the policing system in this county and in Beaverton specifically, where I work. I can speak to a specific incident involving a body cam, actually, which brings up a consistent question that I have yet to really receive much of an answer to. So I was on my regular street outreach route with one of our volunteers. So we do 4 days a week, we walk around with backpacks full of food, water, hygiene supplies, those sorts of things, and we hand them out to folks on the street. And I was at the Beaverton Transit Center, and I saw a couple of officers on bikes at the end of the walking path between Beaverton Central and Beaverton Transit Center. And I saw a younger Black man start walking across the train tracks. There's a part of the Beaverton Transit Center, if you're not familiar, where there's the road and then it intersects with the train tracks. There's a weird set of barriers that are supposed to direct people to where you're supposed to walk to cross the street there. Most of the time, a large majority of people cross the street. So I saw several groups of folks, albeit all white in this particular situation, cross the street where people always do. And then I saw this young Black man cross the street in the same spot. And I saw the two officers exchange some words with each other. And I turned to my volunteer and I was like, I think they're going to stop this guy. And sure enough, they stopped him, and he was going back and forth with them, asking him questions for a solid 5-6 minutes, I would say. They let him go on his way, but they did take his ID, and it sort of staggered me a little bit that I watched several people walk in the same spot right in front of these officers, and they actually waved to a few of them as they walked by. And then this young man does the same thing, and he gets stopped. So I reached out to a contact of mine in the Beaverton Police Department, and I said I'd like to look into this. As it turns out, so they said they would do some investigating. After some calls, I managed to get a hold of the lieutenant who oversaw these officers, and he said he would look into it. He gives me a call back about 2 days later, and he says that one of the officers involved in this particular situation had previously been called for perceived profiling behavior. And so what he told me was they had said that this young man had was walking on the train tracks, which I saw myself, he wasn't. But they cited the body cam footage and said that this had happened outside of the range of the body cam. So realistically, there was no grounds for further investigation, and that they would keep an eye on it and make sure that something like this didn't happen again with this officer. So this begs the question, right? How do we hold these officers accountable when it is so simple to say, oh, this happened outside of the range of this camera, or as time and time again is proven, right? The officer chooses to conveniently forget to turn on these body cameras. I think regardless of whatever direction the county decides to go on the issue of body cameras, and it is necessary to reevaluate how we hold police accountable, right? We have had enough of police policing themselves and absolving themselves of wrongdoing. So I think that if decisions can't be made by the county and the cities within it, to even in the case of Beaverton go as far as to pass very simple low bar measures, such as the 8 Can't Wait initiative, which I personally think, my personal opinion is that is not enough in itself, but it can't even go that far. So if you're not even going to go that far, then you need to figure out a way to hold officers accountable without the officers being the ones that are holding themselves accountable, because then that's not accountability. And that is what we're seeing. That's what we continue to see. And that is what I would like to not see anymore. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So I think that was, perfect, and really like why we need greater police accountability. And it sounds like, I don't know, I just invite people to come to share your ideas about what police accountability can look like in the community in Washington County. Mariah, are you trying to take yourself off mute? Okay.
I mean, I was just looking at the chat, but I just popped back in from a breakout room. My initial response to that question of like, what does police accountability look like is, honestly, I think we should go beyond that and envision what does our community without police look like? If we address more of the root causes of criminalization and acknowledge that a deep root of systemic racism is policing itself, then that means working towards police abolition and envision like really investing in community care. A police abolition doesn't just mean like all of a sudden poof, police are gone. It means investing in community care, in mental health care, in drug addiction care, in housing, all of that, instead of giving more money to police for things like body cameras, which Joey really eloquently said why they don't work.
Right. Thank you. And Rena, you had your hand raised?
Yes, I did. Hello, good evening. My name's Rena. I'm a bilingual educator in Washington County, lifelong resident of Washington County. I am here again. I mentioned in the last two listening sessions about what I'm going to put in the chat right now, which is that the county has already heard from community organizations that represent the very populations that they are purporting to want to hear from now. And I'm really concerned that there hasn't been any initiative to follow through with the very, very specific demands that these organizations who are equipped with a lot of research and who have provided that research to the county have made. So the demand is that you defund the sheriff's office. Now, I got an interesting email a couple days ago from somebody from the county trying to explain to me that the county actually is listening to Reimagine Oregon, but that unfortunately you don't have policy oversight over the sheriff's budget. What I did not, that didn't even feel like an answer to what I was bringing up, because these organizations have really clearly demanded that you defund the sheriff's office, not oversee the sheriff's budget. So it is completely cosmically possible that you all actually do have intentions of listening to the community. But so far, I'm not seeing a whole lot of evidence of that. And this kind of nonsensical response that I received that almost seems like you're just pretending not to understand the demand, sort of just furthers my inclination to think that you are not trying to be receptive to the community. Defunding the sheriff's office means defunding the sheriff's office. We don't want the sheriff's office to create mental health response units. We want funding to come out of the sheriff's office into other parts of the county budget. And then you can do things like mental health response units from there. But you must defund the sheriff's office. And I don't need to explain why, because it's already in the community reinvestment proposal, as well as Reimagine Oregon's website. Both provide a lot of research and information to back why that's the best way to benefit the community right now. And so I'm just really frustrated. If defunding the sheriff's office means you have to eliminate some positions from the sheriff's office, please go ahead and do that. Especially cut the positions of the people who have the most contact with the public, because that's where we know that that point of contact is where harm happens. So if you need to cut positions from the sheriff's office in order to defund the sheriff's office, by all means, do that. But defunding means defunding. Defund the sheriff's office. That's not just me saying that. That's a lot of people who have already told you that, and I know you know that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rena. Sounds like you're a little frustrated, which I understand for sure, because it sounds like this isn't a brand new conversation that's just starting tonight. So we only have about 4 minutes left in this group. And I want to encourage people who haven't spoken to speak up. And I realize I didn't ask the first question, which was how would body cameras specifically affect the LGBTQ community? And if anyone wants to speak to that, I invite you to.
Pedro has asked to speak.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like
Go
to
ahead, Pedro. Sorry, there's a lot of.
No worries. I was giving it some breathing space too. I just wanted to tie in a couple of things that were said recently. Like Mariah mentioned that like nobody's asking for police to like vanish and disappear by tomorrow. We understand that that's never going to happen. But like we want to look towards like solutions that could be possible when we take away the police's money. I know we've talked about like the Cahoots program. That's a really awesome program down in Eugene, but like it's to like tie that into what Rena was saying about, you know, it's an honor to be able to speak to like elected officials as like a queer person, as a child of immigrants, you know, like this for my, you know, gay uncles, like could have never been seen as a possibility. But also like we are the communities you should look to when it comes to like the alternative institutions that don't look like Cahoots. Like queer people like don't live in nuclear families, and they have to rely on their like queer neighbors for medicine and for care and for collecting funds for like medically necessary surgeries. And the same goes with like the immigrant population. Like we come here and we build our own communities that, you know, are separate from like the mainstream communities, but because of, you know, hate and crime. And, you know, when it comes to like reinvesting in communities, it's like reinvesting in queer people, reinvesting in immigrant populations, because we've already done this for ourselves. We've been able to like, as, you know, marginalized people, like look within our community and provide for ourselves what the city and the states have neglected because they don't see us, or they didn't see our ancestors. And now we have this different level of visibility. But to think that the next solution would come by doing what the state has always done, which is policing, it's just misguided. And like I said this in the breakout room, but queer history is way too radical to even talk about body-worn cameras. Like I wish we could have a queer session to talk about queer issues, because the girls don't care about this. I wish we could, like the immigrant, the Latinx listening session could talk about Latinx issues. And I want to one more time ask that we have a listening session focused solely on the climate crisis. And I know there was talks about affordable housing here. I wish we could have just a affordable housing or housing issue listening session. So I would like to see those two things come about, because the climate crisis is scary, y'all. It's scary, and queer kids are affected by it. Immigrants are affected by it. And that's all I got to say.
Thank you, Pedro. Please notice you got some snaps in the chat. So it's actually 7:05, which is the time that other groups are going to join us. I see that Breakout Group 1 already joined us. Oh, we still have 2 minutes. Okay, great. My computer clock, 2 minutes fast. This is a great conversation. So lightning round. Top concerns about body-worn cameras. Hearing none, I feel like people have already said it, in that the cameras aren't the issue, it's the bigger issue, right? Of the police and what accountability actually means. And so, but yeah, I just, yeah, it seems like, okay, folks are sharing their opinions in the chat, that cameras are not a fix, because social workers don't need body cams. And since we do have another minute, I will invite anybody who hasn't spoken to speak up. Okay. Oh, Rena, you're welcome to speak up again. Unless your hand is raised from before, which is also fine. Okay, thank you. And I saw Amy had a comment about policing being inherently racist and anti-queer, and also, as I'm sure Joey knows from their work, that there's such an overabundance of LGBTQ youth who are on the streets because they don't have family support. So it's a real issue of how many kids are LGBTQ. Some say 40% of the youth on the streets identify as LGBTQ, which is a really high and kind of awful number. So thank you everybody for being part of the breakout rooms. And now we're going to have a chance to hear highlights from what happened in each breakout room and have a little bit of an open discussion for our last 20 minutes together. So I'm going to invite breakout group 1, Dr. Tremere, if you will, share what happened in your breakout group.
Of course, I'm still getting used to Dr. Tremere. It's only been a couple months now. Let's see, our group decided to focus on some of the other areas that were identified as top priorities within the recent survey. So we first talked about affordable housing and houselessness, and began the conversation focusing on the importance of housing first models and how we know that they're working best. in addressing the houseless issue in not only here in other parts of Oregon, but around the country, where you have a social work model and other support services like mental health and substance abuse services to wrap around the individuals that are in those units. Also conversations about buildings that we know in Washington County aren't currently being utilized. And is there a way to use those buildings in a more effective way to address some of the issues that we have, especially because there is a lack of actual affordable units. There was conversations also about youth, as was just mentioned by Nancy, the large issue among homeless youth, but specifically some comments about Beaverton being an area that has one of the highest, if not the highest, homeless youth population, and that we need to find solutions for housing of families that keep families together, and that includes their pets whenever possible. Also concerns about the ban on car camping really being a barrier for individuals and needing to find ways to stop criminalizing those who are houseless when options might already be available to them, such as living in their car or an RV. And are there solutions that could exist to set up areas where that is possible? So creating a section of town or city blocks where that may be appropriate, knowing that there aren't enough affordable units and we aren't actively using some of those buildings that might be an option currently. All of this really based on the reality and the firm commitment that housing is a right and that everyone should have access to housing, and that these efforts are really necessary because we can't build enough affordable units. Also during COVID, we know that folks have had trouble maintaining a steady job, and that has impacted income and people's ability to pay for rent and utilities in an ongoing way. And so there were thoughts and conversation about the feasibility of rent stabilization or rent forgiveness and whether that could be a reality within Washington County and what would that take. And then many conversations throughout this dialogue and our conversation about racial justice, about defunding the police, which I'm sure will come up from all of the other groups as well. Let's see, our second conversation just quickly talked about racial justice, and we recognize that racial justice in some of the conversations in looking at Washington County, that some of the past voting records have been problematic in this area, and that there really needs to be training that centers on or that's focused on decentering whiteness and and the culture of white supremacy. Some folks felt like it was encouraging to see that the county has the equity and inclusion officer position being added, but that there are still very large concerns about how the county will move forward, especially the work through the sheriff's office if we're not focused on defunding the efforts currently happening through the sheriff's office. And then thoughts on potential conflict resolution or peer-to-peer mediation training that could potentially happen within the sheriff's office, but then other folks that felt that those efforts wouldn't fully address the issues and that what we really need is a new system in place that is really listening to the communities that are being most impacted and figuring out how we reprogram folks from their natural condition to call the police, and figure out how we might use a new system of social workers or other trained mediators to help de-escalate situations, recognizing that those in a uniform that show up to a situation may in fact just escalate that situation moving forward. I'm gonna ask my note taker if I've missed anything. I'm guessing.
I think that would be you, Kieran.
Yeah, I was trying to see if they were in here. Kieran?
I feel like that was a pretty great.
Yeah, that was a very thorough rundown of the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Kieran. Thank you, Tyler. And Let's hear about breakout group number 2 and what came up for folks there.
Thank you, Nancy. And Glenn, if you can hear me, if you can send me the notes from our session so I can make sure I don't miss anything. And so we had a robust, lively conversation with about 13 individuals. A lot of our conversation started off talking about homelessness, acknowledging that there is a significant need for services, that the amount of Washington County residents that are experiencing houselessness, homelessness, do not have the resources they need. And there was a talk about a lot of different resources, from transitional housing to shelter to outreach and intake, and to basic sanitation. And so these are services that it was mentioned that there's only 2 nonprofits in Washington County serving houseless youth, and that signaling that we do not have the resources and infrastructure we need to support the thousands of youth experiencing homelessness in Washington County. And then, so I just got the notes from Glenn. Let's see what else we got here. And then, mentioning that, we've got Home Plate and you've got Boys and Girls Aid, which only has 7 beds. And then there is, severe weather shelters are only for over 18, which leaves a lot of houseless youth with nowhere to go. And then we talked a lot about the sheriff's office. There were very grave concerns that was a complete consensus in our group around Washington County and how the County Board of Commissioners has handled calls that have been made by over a dozen community-based organizations, many of which that represent, organize, and engage the Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities that live in Washington County. They have called for defunding of the sheriff's office, and the community members expressed that the county commissioners responded to this by assigning the sheriff as the liaison for these concerns. And many, the community group, our breakout group, was in consensus, feeling that Washington County needs to have a more assertive presence in listening to the community and creating an action plan on responding and listening to the demands, and take action on and be transparent to the community with their final decision. And then there was a lot of conversation about policing in general. There was a consensus and opposition to the use of body cams. The breakout session expressed that the places where body cams have been implemented across the country, that there have not been significant changes in the excessive use of force, the violations of people's rights and dignity, and that using those funds here would not guarantee improved safety or outcomes, but would also raise a lot of questions about people's privacy and constitutional rights. And so there was a very clear opposition to body cams in the breakout groups. There was questions about what are alternatives to accountability and public safety. And the group was unanimous in elevating the need to defund the police, to reinvest those resources from police officers into services for the community. So direct community engagement, funding housing services, economic services, and more. And then finally, the conversation was also on community engagement. And many people expressed frustration on the turnout for this listening session. They also expressed that many of the ideas and opinions that were presented during this listening session have already been presented to the Washington County Board of Commissioners, and folks have not felt like they've gotten the relevant direct feedback to those concerns. And then there was also a feeling that even with this listening session, that Washington County for years has had the opportunity to do better, to engage the community, and especially our most diverse communities, to hear their experiences and to create modes of action that are responsive to their needs. And so there was a request, even with this frustration and with the turnout and with past practices of community engagement, there was majority of folks who expressed the gratitude for this listening session to happen. There is hope that their concerns will be heard and that they will get feedback, and they hope that Washington County will continue to host listening sessions such as these and to invest more in engagement to ensure that we have the turnout that we need to really be reflective of the community's perspective. Those are all. Let me just look at the notes real quick. And then specifically, there was an acknowledgement that there needs to be more engagement for the LGBTQ plus community in specific, that those resources have been almost non-existent. So that is the response from the breakout groups. We had very wonderful people who, many of whom I've known for many years, who shared, and I'm grateful that you all took the time to be here and let your voices be known. And this is all part of the public record, and we are happy to know that we have members of our community that are outspoken and are calling us to pay attention to these important issues. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Cameron. Wonderful summarization. And I think that because the commissioners were in the main breakout group, I won't spend a lot of time talking about what we talked about, but I will share that I felt like the general feel of the room was that the body cameras are a Band-Aid on a broken, unjust system and clearly not enough, and that real police accountability goes way beyond a body camera. So that's just like in a nutshell. We need to do better, and we need to do a lot more. And so we have a little bit less than 10 minutes left, and it feels like I want to give people the opportunity to respond to what you just heard. Also, if you're in the main breakout group, I know I just shared one sentence of what we talked about, and it was a really amazing group of activists and organizers and lawyers and social workers, and I really respect everything you're doing in the community. I just wanted to share that there's been some requests also to share the survey again. Folks want to look at that. I will invite folks to share it again. So if, sorry person from the county whose name I don't remember, if you want to share Highland, the survey that will pop up, great. So folks.
Is this what you were looking for, Nancy?
Yes.
Okay, great.
I think folks.
Nancy, do you want the first poll? This is the second.
Can we, yeah, why don't we pop up the first one? So, just about an hour ago, we asked this polling question, and oh, okay. So things have shifted in your results, in that more folks are disagreeing now than they did in the first poll. So that's really good to know. So thank you for voting again. And let's leave it open just for a few more seconds, maybe 30 more seconds. So to allow more people to vote if they'd like. And then, yeah, I'll leave it open a little bit longer. And then, because it does look pretty different from the first survey. And then why don't we go ahead and ask the second polling question too. Great. So that shifted quite a bit. And so, yeah, let's move to the second one, which is a little bit more involved. Thank you. Thanks for participating. Let's leave this open for another 30 seconds or so, give folks a chance. There's a lot of words in the survey. And if you voted before, you get to vote again. Different from most voting you get to do. Okay. Probably that's, we can end there. And I don't have a photographic memory. Oh, there we go. So I don't remember exactly what the first one did versus the second one, but it does look like we should, that results have changed and that folks are maybe have a different opinion and have a lesser opinion of body cameras than you may have walked into this conversation with. So thank you folks for participating in the poll. And thank you everybody for having such an active chat too. I feel like there's been really valuable information shared, and that will be in the notes, and that will be part of the conversation about this meeting. And I saw Rena just shared the Reimagine Oregon policy, and also shared earlier, I think the letter that a bunch of community organizations has already sent to Washington County, groups like CARE, the Council of American Islamic Relations, APANO, just lots of Unite Oregon, lots of community groups. So thank you for sharing all that. And in our last few minutes, I wanted to see if there was any final comments from participants, and then I'm going to invite Chair Harrington to share any final thoughts. Okay, I don't hear anything. I don't see any hands. Oh, Sush.
Hi.
Hi.
I just want to say that I'm extremely disappointed because the community that I was hoping to hear from today is not here. And I'm going to say this again and again because that is important. We have heard our voices. I've heard my voice multiple times. I've heard the voices of others who are on the call today. So today's hearing session is a failure and it needs to be redone. And for the other listening sessions, we need to do paid advertising. We need to send out community engagers. We need to reach each and every organization that we have, pester them every single day to ensure that they have at least 5 to 10 representatives on this call. Do whatever it takes. 25 people do not represent 700,000 people. We need 500 people on these listening sessions for it to be truly effective and reflect the community that we are meant to serve. Otherwise, it's just going to be my voice and 25 others who have similar opinions like me on this call. and that's not equity.
Thank you. So I think that there's, yeah, that's an important call to action for folks in the community to be even more engaged and get more people involved. So as we're closing in on time, I'm going to invite Chair Harrington to share any final words that you might have. Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you. I want to thank you, Nancy, Cameron, Dr. Tamir, and others who helped ensure that members of our LGBTQ community here in Washington County knew about tonight's forum, and that this is a welcoming and safe space for our community members to join us. It's been a real honor to hear from you this evening. This is the first time that I know of that the Washington County Board of Commissioners has hosted a community engagement effort with members of our LGBT community. And so I really want to take this opportunity to recognize that this is a first starting point. This is not an ending point by any stretch of the imagination. And I really sincerely appreciate those of you who came and joined us this evening to express your truth. I really appreciate it. We have a few more of these sessions yet, as hopefully provided for other community groups within our greater Washington County community. Well, we have another one this Thursday night, on Saturday, and then again next Monday night. So thank you all for joining us. We will be getting your input as part of a comprehensive report that will be put together for the Board of Commission members. We'll be getting that in mid to the third week or so of September. And then we'll have the benefit of a board discussion about the report late in September. And you may ask, so why? Why is this taking so long? Well, first of all, we have to go through the full set of 6 listening sessions. They end on August 31st. And then the folks who have helped put together these forums need time in order to gather all that feedback, reflect on it, and organize it for the benefit of the commissioners. And that does take a little bit of time. I also want to thank Commissioner Dick Scouten and Commissioner Pam Treese for joining me tonight in this community conversation. They are great colleagues and work hard to ensure that we all are better informed by our community members. I know this can be a frustrating process for you. It can be frustrating for us as well to hear some things that don't quite jive with the facts as we know them to be. But nonetheless, we hear what you have said and we're learning more together. And I understand for the second meeting in a row that Rena is critiquing me as I speak. You know, I'm pleased that she has the opportunity to express her opinion in real time. So thank you again, Nancy. Great job tonight. Thank you to our breakout hosts as well. Really appreciate your efforts, and we'll get better together. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all for being part of this tonight. I really value all the activists and organizers and community folks who are here tonight. It really makes a huge difference. So keep making your voice heard.
I love what Corinne just said. If you identify as LGBTQA+ and showed up, you are a leader.
Yes. Thank you for that. And thanks everyone for being here. And I hope everyone has a great night. Take care.